Preposiciones en español. A veces son difíciles de entender. In today's video, I'm going to teach you how to use prepositions in Spanish. Be aware, prepositions are small little connecting words, but students oftentimes use them incorrectly. So it is very important that you understand how we use them in Spanish. The first and most common one we have is a. Now, a can mean many different things depending on the context of the sentence. Most often, it means to or at. But let's take a look at some examples. Por ejemplo, tenemos fuimos a México. Fuimos a México. We went to Mexico. The idea here is that with a, the noun that is receiving the verb gets the action of the verb. Okay, I think I botched that a little bit. So here, this noun, Mexico, is receiving the action of this verb, fuimos. Okay, so fuimos a Mexico. Our action of going is getting received by Mexico, and a connects the two. So just like in the example of vamos al parque, same thing. Here's our verb, and the park is receiving that action of us going. Now notice how I underlined al. You might have not seen this before. Al is simply a and el put together. So instead of saying vamos a parque, which would just be we're going to park, right? Sounds like we're a caveman. We want to say we're going to the park. So we need to put el. But instead of saying vamos a el parque, we say vamos al parque. That's why del taco is called del taco, because in Spanish, we don't say de el taco, we would say del taco, for example, okay? So if I want to say, I'm from the West Coast, I don't know why I thought of that example, soy de, oh wait, that's a bad idea, soy del oeste, for example, I am from the West, soy del oeste de Estados Unidos, I'm from the west of the United States, okay? So, al. A and el put together, okay? Voy a leer. So notice how now here we have two verbs, okay? Voy a leer. We will use a to connect two different verbs. So I am going to read. And you may have heard of that form called the informal future, which is ir plus a plus infinitive, right? The verb ir, so something like voy, plus a plus an infinitive verb, like leer. I could say voy a bailar, voy a disfrutar. You get the idea, okay? Hecho a mano. Now, this is an interesting use case. Hecho a mano. We use a when we're saying how we did something. So, caminé a pie. I walked on foot. Or, in this case, we have what's called the past participle, hecho a mano, made by hand, okay? ¿Conoces a Juan? Do you know Juan? Okay, so once again, here's our verb, okay, and then here's our noun. So the action of me knowing is directly affecting Juan. It affects Juan, and therefore we use a to connect them together, okay? Conoces a Juan. Okay, cool. Let's take a look at some more examples. Le di el regalo a Luis. Okay, le di el regalo a Luis. Okay, so here, Luis is receiving the action of the giving, all right? So Luis is getting the verb of di, okay? Now, notice how we have le here. Le is an indirect object pronoun, and this is what we would call the redundant le in this particular example. It's redundant because when I add the a Luis, well, I understand I'm talking about Luis. So I don't necessarily need to put le here. However, we call it the redundant le because this le gives extra context. Once again, like I just said, we have a Luis, so it already makes sense, right? With a Luis, I feel like I'm absolutely botching this explanation. I'm so sorry. But here's the idea. In Spanish, I can cut off a Luis, and I can just say, le di el regalo. So arguably, the redundant le is not redundant. It should always be there, okay? Le di el regalo a Luis, okay? I gave Luis the gift, okay? So I'm giving the gift to Luis, okay? Cenamos a las 7. We eat dinner at 7. This could also be translated as we ate dinner at 7. We don't have extra context. cenamos a las 7. So we eat dinner at 7. Okay, at. So the word a can mean to, can mean at, and in some situations it doesn't have that perfect translation, like in this case, hecho a mano, made by hand. Okay? Excellent. Now let's take a look at de, all right? We're going to look at more prepositions in this video. We're going to have more examples for certain prepositions than others, but you're going to learn a lot of prepositions in this video, okay? De, okay? De typically means of or from, okay? So let's take a look. Es la casa de Alex. Now, let's translate this literally, okay? It is the house of Alex. In English, we would say Alex's house. We kind of do that is sound. Alex's house, for example. However, in Spanish, we would say this is the house of Alex. La casa de Alex. Okay, that is his possession. It is of him. He owns it. Okay, es la casa de Alex. Estoy cansado de correr. I am tired of running. Notice how I'm not saying corriendo, which in this case, estoy cansado de correr in English translates as I am tired of running. However, you wouldn't say estoy cansado de corriendo, and I see students make that mistake all the time. The idea is when you are using corriendo, it sounds like you are doing it right now, okay? I am tired of running, okay? And it sounds like I'm doing it right now, literally right now, okay? Whereas estoy cansado de correr, we have our noun, and then we have de, and then we have our verb, okay, kind of connecting the entire phrase. This takes on the idea of ing, but it doesn't necessarily need to be happening right now. So, estoy cansado de sus mentiras. I am tired of her lies. Or estoy cansado de escuchar sus mentiras. I'm tired of hearing her lies. You're not necessarily doing that right now. Maybe you are, but maybe you aren't. Okay, so you wouldn't say escuchando, you would say escuchar in that example. Okay, so estoy cansado de correr. This could also be used in an example like estoy orgulloso de ti. I am proud of you. Soy de California. I am from California. Literally, I am of California. Students often ask if soy is different than yo soy. Not really. They basically mean the same thing. You could think of this as soy is I am or I'm, and yo soy is I am, and that's it. Okay? Soy de California. I'm from California. Más de 10. Okay. More than 10. When we're talking about quantities in Spanish, we will use de. Okay? Now, que, the word que, Q-U-E, is typically used when comparing things. So, if I were to say, yo sé más que tú. I know more than you, which sounds very condescending. I don't know why I thought that. Okay, yo sé más que tú. I know more than you. However, when we're talking about things of quantity, we will use de. Okay, so hay más de 10. There are more than 10. Okay, tengo más de 10 hermanos. I have more than 10 siblings, which is not true. Okay, and finally for de, papel de baño. So here we have two nouns and we're connecting them. Papel de baño, literally paper of bathroom or toilet paper. Or you could think jugo de manzana, apple juice, jugo de manzana. You wouldn't say manzana jugo, you would say jugo de manzana. Let's move on to the next part of the video. All right, let's look at some more common prepositions in Spanish. Número 3, en. Now, en almost always means in or on, okay? Context is king in Spanish. Remember that. It's very important, okay? Está en mi bolsa. It is in my bag. The ones here in blue, we're talking about location. So en, these are all for location, okay? Está en mi bolsa. It is in my bag. Now, the translation here is in. It is not inside of. If you want to say inside of, you could say dentro de, meaning inside of. You also say adentro, okay? Dentro de is inside of something. Adentro also means inside, but it's kind of like inside of a place. So, for example, ¿Dónde está Juan? Está ahí adentro. He's there inside of that building, okay? Él está dentro del edificio. He is inside of the building. The translation there is really subtle. Dentro de, inside of, adentro, inside. Okay? So, hay un cuadro en la pared. There is a painting on the wall. Hay un cuadro en la pared. Okay, now we're having a translation of on because in this case, doesn't make sense. Están en casa. They are at home. The translation here works as at. You can also say they are in the house. But in here, I'm saying say they're at home. Okay? When I cut off the la there, when I cut off that article and I just have la casa, when I have casa, it just means home. Okay? La casa, house, or could also mean home. But casa can just mean home. Okay? Están en casa. They are at home. Okay? Once again, the idea here is we're talking about location. Nos vemos en una hora. Okay, now we're talking about time. Okay, see you in an hour. Nos vemos en una hora. Okay, once again, the translation is almost always in or on. Voy en avión. Okay, I am going in plane or I'm going by plane is how you could think of that. Okay, I'm going on a plane, in a plane, by plane. Voy en avión. ¿Cómo vas a México? Voy en avión. I'm going in plane. You could also say voy por avión. I am going by plane. Okay? And finally, I just have this little phrase for you. Es en serio. Okay? If someone says en serio, this basically just means like seriously or really. Sí, es en serio. Okay? So if someone said to you, en serio. Sí, es en serio. Yes, seriously. Okay? Cool. All right. Almost done. Before we continue, click the link in the video description if you want to join our Fluent Spanish Speaker Academy. We have more than 200 students, and you can learn more about it by clicking the link in the video description. Next is con, meaning with. So, for example, ¿Qué pasa con él? What's going on with him? Or what's up with him? Okay? Con in Spanish is pretty much exactly how we would use it in English. The only difference with con is in a word like contigo or conmigo. Okay, so instead of saying con ti or con mi, in Spanish we will say contigo or conmigo. Okay, so contigo, with you, conmigo, with me. Okay, por and para, por means for, and para also means for. There are two different kinds of fors. This one por can mean due to or because of. Para typically has a motive behind it. You're trying to achieve something with it. I have longer, in-depth videos just on por and para on this channel and inside my academy, so you can check those lessons out there. Finally, sobre. Okay, sobre means over, can also mean about, can also mean on, so on top of something. So for example, es sobre su vida. So let's say we're talking about a book. I could say el libro es sobre su vida. The book is about his life. Now, you could also see something like de, okay? El libro es de su vida. It's about his life. Sobre sounds a little bit more specific there. Now, sobre can also mean like above or on top of something. So an example that really helped me that my girlfriend actually taught me was hay una sobra sobre la mesa. No. Hay un sobre. Now I'm getting all mixed up. Hay un sobre la mesa. Because a sobre can also mean an envelope. And I used to get the word sobre and sobras confused. Sobras are leftovers, okay? Two very different things. So, hay un sobre la mesa. There is an envelope on the table or on top of the table. Bueno, muchas gracias por ver este video. These are just a few of the most important prepositions. If you want to learn about all the different prepositions, click the link in the video description to learn about them inside the Fluent Spanish Speaker Academy. If you have any questions, leave me a comment on this video. Muchas gracias y espero que tengas buen día. Hasta luego.